Okay, in this section, we're going to cover advanced timing on the effect package in the Express console. What we've done so far with effects from the basic course was just talking about a real simple chase, step-based, where you have a channel and it just kind of runs through step, 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 step. But there's actually quite a bit more you can do with timing with the effect package in the console. So I'm looking at a cue here that I already have an effect recorded. Essentially, and what we're talking about here is the column to the far right here of the effect area. So I already have my steps created and I've got my channels that are going to come up in those steps. And by default, the time here is 0.2 of a second. Now what the time column means is the amount of time it takes for the effect to go from one step to the next, like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 1, 2, 3. By default, it's 0.2 of a second. So let's see what that looks like when it runs in stage mode. This is Q51. So I'm going to go to stage, I'm going to run Q51, and you can see that I just have 0.2 of a second blocks of 5 channels kind of going on, and all the way through. Maybe I want to change how long it takes to do that, so I can go back into blind and look at that cue and select my steps using soft key 1. I can select all of them, steps 1 through 3, because I can make these changes all at once. Use my arrow keys to use the right arrow to move over to the column for time, and I'm going to change this to 1 second. And anytime I make a change to an effect in blind, I have to, as it will remind me, I have to record enter. So I record enter, I'm going to go back out to stage, and I'm going to run that cue, Q51. And now you can see that the time it takes to go from one step to the next is quite a bit longer. It's actually 1 second as opposed to 0.2 of a second. And you can see the behavior of the effect as it does that. Now, by default, an effect is going to do exactly what you're seeing here. The lights are going to pop onto full when the step is active, and they're going to go pop off to 0 when the step is inactive, and then each step is going in order, so we have this chase effect. But I can actually soften that a little bit using some additional timing parameters in the effect. So let's take a look at how to do that. So back in blind, looking at the cue, I have 3 more columns here next to time, labeled in, dwell, and out. Now this is the same concept of in, dwell, and out that was covered in a section on submaster timing. And it basically applies the same way. The language is the same. So in is the time it takes the step for the effect to fade in. Dwell is how long it stays in, and out is how long it takes for that step of the effect to fade out. So let's make some timing changes to those parameters and see how that looks when the effect runs. I'm going to grab all 3 of my steps again using my step soft key, 1 through 3. I'm going to use the right arrow into my in time, and I'm going to make this, make that 0.2 of a second. I'm going to use the right arrow to go to my dwell time and make this maybe half a second, 0.5. And then my out time, I'm going to make this maybe 0.3 of a second. I'm going to record enter. Now I intentionally made the in, dwell, and out time add up to 1 second because what I want to do is have each step getting through its completed phase of in, dwell, and out before the next step starts, and I'll show you how that can change in the next bit. But let's look at how this looks right now. I'm going to go back out to stage. I'm going to run the cue, and you can see now that instead of the lights popping onto full and off, they're fading up and out. The next one starts fade up, out, next one up, out, and it kind of does this kind of fading as opposed to kind of the snapping on and off. So it's a nice way to add some subtlety to an effect that maybe wants to dim up and down as opposed to snapping on and off. But notice each step was able to complete all the way before the next one started. So let's look at that. And now what I want to do is I'm going to go back in and I'm going to decrease the time, the overall time of each step, and I'm going to make it a little bit shorter, maybe say to 0.8 of a second. So I'm going to grab my steps 1 through 3, arrow over to time, make it 0.8. Don't forget to record enter. And now you can see that the in, dwell, and out times still add up to 1 second, but the time between the steps is actually shorter than that. What that means is that step 1 is not going to have a chance to finish before step 2 starts, which means I'm going to get an overlap. So let's see how that looks when we run that effect. So Q51, go. You can see that before before step 1 finishes, step 2 takes on, so you get this kind of an overlap where it's like one step hands off to the next one. So it's kind of a nice transition between the two as opposed to letting one step go all the way out before the next one picks up. So you can actually create some very subtle timing differences with these effects and the timing. A lot of the timing is trial and error. You're just going to have to go in and experiment with different in dwells and out times. The general rule of thumb is to start by making in dwell and out add up to the time, and then from there make some adjustments. A common mistake here is that people will make in dwell and out time so long and the time of the step so short that the effect actually runs all the way through to the beginning again before the step has a chance to finish, and the effect pretty much does nothing. So a good place to start is make your in dwell and out time add up to the time and then make minor adjustments from there. But using these features, you can actually get some pretty dynamic timing on effects on your Express console.